And we are live. Another exciting podcast. What I have here today is Jered Fontenot. He goes by under LA Bass on Facebook. A lot of you probably have seen him on there. I know I certainly have. The first thing I have to do is tell you about the Garden State Outdoor Sports Show. That's going to take place January 6th through 9th of 2022 at the New Jersey Convention and Exposition Center, and that's in Edison, New Jersey. Also, the Northern Illinois Sports and Outdoor Show is going to take place January 13th through 16th of 2022. That's going to be at the Lake County Fairgrounds in Grays Lake, Illinois. Go on into the Northern Illinois Sports Show. Go to the Grant Rods booth. They're going to have a huge booth, and tell them Jay sent you. And now, without further ado, I'd like to talk to Jered Fontenot. How you doing today, Jered?
Oh, not too bad. Just leaving Tennessee and heading up to Nebraska to do some post fishing, whitetail and mule deer hunting with some guys I grew up with.
Nice. That's going to be fun, man. Boy,
Absolutely.
Nebraska, big old deer out there, huh?
Heck yeah. In 2019, I shot the biggest deer of my life, and it's hanging on my wall right now back home in Louisiana. So I'm hoping, to repeat that, of course.
Yeah, I wish you the best of luck with that. So you were just on Lake Telico in Tennessee, weren't you?
Correct. Yeah, that's my first time fishing that lake. So I went down a few days early and did some scouting. I ran up Loudon for the first probably 4 days and just really couldn't find anything consistent with my practice, something that would, pan out or, in my opinion, give me confidence going into tournament day. So my last day of practice, I decided to run south on Telico, which a lot of guys don't like that area because it's a lot clearer than Loudon. But I couldn't find anything that I really, wanted to fish come tournament day. So I went grass.
Grass. Okay.
Graph. I went graphs and deep fish. Even
Grass.
time of year, typically this time of year, you think, that fall time, that bait fish is moving up shallow, and the bass are going to follow them in shallow into the backs of these coves and creeks and fingers and things like that. But I just really couldn't produce, something that gave me confidence going in tournament day. So I said, I have all this equipment. Why not use it? So I started graphing second and third points in the backs of these coves in about 20, 25 foot of water. And I actually came across two schools of fish that I graphed my last day of practice. And I said, let me check them. Just sometimes, they'll have some stripers or sand bass out there that will look like, largemouth. So I dropped in on each of these schools for about 5 minutes, and I picked up a 2.5 and a 3 pounder. It looked like, something I was looking for. So I left. I didn't want to beat them up or put pressure on them. Came back today, and they were still there. The conditions didn't really change much, except for that post front. And I started fishing first thing that morning on these schools and catching consistent fish, but they were all 13, 13.5 inch fish.
Oh, no.
Yeah, not 14-inch largemouth. And that's pretty much how my day went. It was hard to leave these schools of fish because they were so big, even though I wasn't getting quality bites, just because I didn't have anything else that gave me confidence to be able to produce fish.
Wow.
Pretty much I burned it down on day one, just catching, short fish.
How many times has that happened to you during a tournament, though? Everything you catch is half an inch short.
Quite often, but typically, if you could work through some of these, bites, you'll produce some bigger fish or throw some different baits and trigger a bigger bite. But it was just real tough. They were drawing the lake down for that winter drawdown.
Yes, that's what Rob Welsh was telling me. Yeah.
So it was pulling pretty hard from the bottom, and I don't know if it just messed them up or maybe it was that post front. But once I saw the weights after the tournament, I think sixth place, which top six made All-American, sixth place had, I think, 7 pounds, 5 ounces.
Oh, man.
Which that lets you know out of 200 boaters how tough it was. So
they had some good fishermen there too. I recognized a lot of those names.
Yeah. So I really couldn't see myself on day two going play around with these largemouth that were just short fish, and it wouldn't be able to make up the weight that way anyway. So I pulled an audible and I ran all the way south even further, probably about an hour boat ride with all the fog they had that morning. I mean, I might have went 10 miles an hour for 30 minutes. It was pretty brutal. But I went down and I started fishing these bluff walls in about 70 foot of water, and they had some riprap over there too. But I was throwing. This is my go-to bait right here, which is a green pumpkin Cinco. Back home, I throw it a lot too if the bite gets tough. Typically, when they're transitioning, these bass don't want to cooperate. But it's a green pumpkin Cinco on a quarter shaky head, and then I put this humdinger little blade on the back of it, and it gives it just a little bit of action. And I flipped it on these bluff walls in about 60, 70 foot of water, and just let it, fall slowly, and they would hit it typically at about 20, 25 foot of water.
So
And
you were fishing suspended fish.
yeah, these smallmouth. I mean, I could see them on my graph. Uh, and the fight was on after that. I mean, that was the first time I caught some Tennessee smallmouth, and it was a blast. Bittersweet that these fish were small too. The limit was 18 inches over there on this lake.
Yeah.
All these fish were 17 and a half, 17 and three quarters.
Oh,
It just
oh man.
it's
Again,
a pattern for me, catching half-inch to a quarter-inch short fish all weekend long.
you just couldn't catch a break, huh?
Oh, and these smallmouth were healthy, man. I mean, real healthy fish, but just short. I mean, 3 pound plus fish.
Wow.
Yeah, so I stayed with the smallmouth all day long and enjoyed it for what it was. Something we can't do back home.
Well, yeah, it wasn't beastly cold yet, but it was probably a little bit cold, and the sun was out,
Yeah,
and
it
you
was
were
bluebird that day.
smallmouth bass.
That was the first time all week that the sun showed its face. But that morning it was 34 degrees.
Wow.
Made for a tough day, no doubt. I think when the final results were in, the sixth place was a little over 12 pounds, which
For 2 days.
for a 2 day total, 12 pounds in sixth place. It was crazy.
Wow.
Made for a really tough tournament, that's for sure.
All you had to do was catch a couple of keepers, and
I mean, if
you
if
were
those
in.
smallmouth, if those smallmouth I was catching are another half inch, if they touch a line, you're bringing 15 to, you know, 18 pounds to the scales with five smallmouth.
Wow. I'm sorry about this.
Got your
Oh,
fishing bodyguard.
yeah. Somebody was delivering something, and the dogs had to tell me about it.
But other than Tellico, I mean, it was a beautiful lake, great scenery. I'd like to come back, maybe in the spring or around March or something like that, and really try and dissect that lake. Wasn't much grass out there for sure, and I mean it's similar to fishing back home, kind of with the current and everything like that. But uh, other than that, yeah, some of the baits I would throw would be this Jaboom. It's the beaver balls right here.
That looks like something you use for punching.
Yeah, it is. Back home, that's one of my favorite things. I was actually looking for some grass out there and couldn't come across any, but Jaboom Bait Company makes the soft plastics for me right here. They're one of my sponsors this year, and they will be next year as well. But I mean, this is probably one of the hottest soft plastics on the market, and
Look at
I'm
those ribs.
yeah. So most of your beaver style baits will have the ribs going horizontal, but they have them vertical on these soft plastics, and it just I mean it slides right through these mats. I mean thick, thin, hay grass. I mean everything. It's a great bait for punching mats, and if you just want to flip some structure, it's good for that too.
So what do you use when you punch?
Me, typically, I have a Alpha Angler 7.3 heavy rod, 60-pound braid. Depending on what I'm punching, anywhere from a 3/4 to ounce and a half with a 5/0 straight shank hook. I peg it, and hopefully smash some fish.
Okay. Yeah, because I use a 7.6 razor rods.
Yeah,
That's a heavy action.
I like a little shorter just because in South Louisiana where I do a lot of my punching like that, I mean, I'm getting in to the thick of it, and if my rod's
Sure.
too long, I'm hitting stuff above my head. I'm tucked in under these trees and things like that. I feel like I
And
can
you're going through the water lilies,
say it again.
and you're punching through the water lilies.
Everything. I mean, anything,
Yeah.
everything. I think that'll be holding some fish. Especially in peak summertime when that sun comes out, it's easier to pinpoint them.
The only place I just started pitching. I told you I'm from Northern Illinois, and we just don't do it up there.
Yeah.
It's mostly offshore structure that we target.
Right. Right. And that's pretty much how my year's been. I mean, this is my first year fishing. A tournament. Circuit competitive bass fishing. I've been bass fishing. My whole life.
Sure.
But it it was definitely a culture shock coming from South Louisiana fishing structure you could see with your eyes. Lay down, cypress knees, anything in that 2-3 foot depth of water, and then you go fish a lake like Rayburn or Toledo Bend, and
Yeah.
you're not within 500 yards of a bank, and you're fishing structure that you can't see. Which
And you're fishing stump fields up north. We'll fish rock piles. We'll
right,
fish weed beds. The edges of weeds, not punching into the weeds.
right,
Or we'll fish humps or saddles between islands. And everything is about offshore. And I came down here, and the bass up north tend to school up, which is one thing I like, because if you find, just like you were talking, you had to sort through 30, 40 fish in a day, and that's exciting.
yeah, for sure. No, it it's some of my favorite time. A few months ago, I like fishing that main lake point. When those fish school up on main lake points, like on Rayburn. I mean, you could pretty much go to Rayburn without a graph and pick any main lake point in a certain depth range and throw out a drop shot, robo worm, or something along that line, and catch fish. And it might not be tournament grade fish, but it's still fun to catch a 100 spot, 100 spotted bass. Just kind of have fun.
Yeah, just, if you can get you some flatworms, and that's
Go to, right?
actually, I have a friend who just got some, and he gave me some. I told him these things really do exist. I thought they were just a rumor.
No, you just got to know somebody.
Yeah,
Kind of like
I,
a members only jacket.
I thought I had people.
Yeah, right. Until you need something like that.
They need flatworms. But there's plenty of good stuff. Cajun Lures make some good stuff for that.
Yeah, I mean, I've thrown their baits a good bit over the years, but typically my favorite creature bait, if I'm not punching them at with one of these jabooms that have been great to me, I like that speed crawl, like a sapphire blue.
Sure.
Throw it in the marsh. Gibson
Is that a
bite
Zoom? Is that a Zoom or Bass Assassin?
zoom.
Zoom. Okay.
Yeah, it's a real stealth bait. You can work it multiple ways. I mean, I like it on 1/8 ounce tungsten. So I mean, I could throw it out there. Typically, they'll hit it on the fall,
Okay.
or I could burn it across the top, and then pause it. And sometimes they'll smash it that way too.
That's fun. My favorite bass. My go-to presentation is actually wacky rigging. That's what I did a lot because I was a guide up in Northern Illinois for, almost 2 decades. And when you got people drop shotting and wacky rigging, they can actually do that safely, and they can catch a lot of fish. It doesn't take a whole lot of.
Yeah, no, not at all. That's considering the way I started fishing, and now what I know. I mean, deep fishing is my absolute favorite now. Just you're not fishing blind. If you could pinpoint these schools and get them fired up, I mean, it makes for a great day. Which in a perfect world that would happen every time, but that's bass fishing for you.
That's bass fishing. That is bass fishing. That's bass fishing. Actually, when I saw Hank Cherry win the Bassmaster Classic a couple years ago when he was casting riprap shorelines, that is my favorite presentation. Favorite place to fish, with one of my favorite presentations with those. I've never seen anybody in cold water work a jerkbait so quickly and catch so many fish. Man, my hat was off to him. I'd always heard, cold water, you got to just let that thing sit until you can't stand it anymore.
Yeah.
And I caught a lot of fish doing that. But, when I saw him catching those fish, he was burning that thing.
Yeah, sometimes it's just, if you blow it up like that, they can't help. Their instincts kick in and they have to react to it. But in the case for me fishing Telico this week, all week long, I mean, I power fish, frit side crankbait, lipless crankbait. I mean, I threw it all. I threw balsa. I mean, every shad looking, bait that you could throw, spinner bait. I threw a thunder cricket. I threw a bladed jig. Everything. And finally it came to a point. My dad had told me something when I was younger. Sometimes they just want it really slow, and I never understood that. But with the temperature dropping, it was 58 degrees, I think, the water temp when I started catching these fish on that Cinco. And I mean, I just annoyingly slow. It makes for a very long day if you're not catching fish and you're working it like that. But
Yes.
if it takes you 20 minutes to catch a fish, in my opinion, it's worth it to just slow it down.
I do agree with you. Do you have any other baits you'd like to show us?
Just the two baits that I like to throw by Jaboom Bait Company. Like I said, you could flip it, you could punch it. If you haven't experienced a bait like this, I mean, you got to go out there and check it out. They have a website, Jaboom Bait Company, just like on my hat right here, jaboombaitcompany.com, and they'll ship to you all across the world. They'll ship it to California, New York, wherever you're at, and it'll definitely step your game up if you're flipping in some really thick cover.
That's good. Kaboombaitco.com?
Jaboom. Just like on my hat.
Jaboom.
Jaboom.
Jaboom, okay.
Yes, sir. It's windy out here.
Yeah.
I'm sitting in the parking lot right now in Illinois.
Okay. Did I get that right when I put that?
What's that?
Did you see? If I put the Jaboom Bait Company.
Yeah, that's it.
Okay.
And they're on Facebook. They did a wonderful job this year. Before all my tournaments, I'd get with them and let them know if I wanted, some of these beaver balls or some speed worms. I mean, they were phenomenal, and they'd ship me a package before each tournament, depending on where I was fishing and the type of fishing I'd be doing. They'd send me a package with all these soft plastics that I really like.
Okay. Okay. So when you fish around your house, do you fish you fish down in Gibson out of Bob's Bayou Black Marina?
I used to fish, Spillway a lot. That was one of my favorite places to go, just because, Barrett right across. I think they have bigger, healthier fish over there, but they don't have nearly the quantity that Spillway has. But once I figured out that lake just a little bit, I've grown to enjoy Barrett. I haven't fished Spillway in probably almost a year.
Okay.
I really enjoy Barrett. That's probably one of my more favorite places to go. If I'm not there, Bayou Black's really fun. That whole Gibson area.
Oh, sure. I fished that quite a few times.
Yeah.
So Bayou Bonfuco?
Yeah, I like to run south over there, near Bayou Karen Crow, south of the Brady, that whole area.
Okay.
It's one of the few places you can go in South Louisiana and you could catch freshwater bass, trout, redfish, all in the same area. Maybe not what you want for a tournament or anything like that, but just fun fishing. I mean, who doesn't want to catch fresh insult in the same area?
I've done that in Telico.
Yeah, that's another place you could do it.
Caught huge bass. Hook into a bass. I would have died for during a tournament, but I'm like, this isn't a very big fish.
Right.
I'm pulling in, expecting a 27-inch red, and here's a 19-inch bass. I'm like, wow, that's a hog.
Yeah, Venice is like that too.
Venice gets even bigger ones.
Oh yeah, that this bait is one of the baits I actually throw, that Jaboom beaver balls. Flipping those Rosos. That's some of my more favorite fishing. And you're not going to go over there and catch 5, 6 pounders, but I mean, if you can go get on them when the tide's right, catch 30, 40 in a few hours, it sure makes for a fun day.
That is fun flipping for redfish, though.
Absolutely.
I love doing that because sometimes they just barely touch it, and then if you can set the hook just right, then you set the hook and like, man, I am snagged.
Yeah, for sure. You think you hit an oyster bed or something like that. I feel like them redfish always do the same thing too. They literally, once they figure out their hook, they're running parallel with the bank, and then at some point when they get closer to the boat and you think they're tapped out, they're gonna hit round 2 again, and here they go, fight's on.
The first time I hooked into one of those things, I just could not believe it. Being from the north, I'd never even heard of redfish till I came down here, and boy,
it's a fun, sure.
I just could not believe it. I was using a cracked crab.
Really?
But for the first time, I actually got out with one of the charter boat captains, and and I asked him, can we go over there to those rocks? I want to flip those rocks with some of my bass fishing equipment. He said, "Oh, you'll have a good time with that." And I was getting these little bitty bites, and I'm like, "I think that's a pinfish." He said, "That's not a pinfish, man. Set the hook next time that happens." Boy, I did. It was about a 20-pound red.
That's always a good time.
I just could not believe it, man. They must have just been barely touching that thing,
Yeah, for sure.
Wow. Well, hey, do you have any shout outs you'd like to do?
Yeah, several people I'd like to thank this year. I mean, not just sponsors alone, but everyone that has contributed. A real good friend of mine, Levitt Hamilton, he's well known in South Louisiana for being, a great angler. He's been doing it a very long time, and he's kind of been my mentor throughout this season because he's done the dance, All American, all that good stuff.
Sure.
So he actually travels with me for most of our big tournaments, and he's been a great mentor this year. I can't thank him enough for helping me as much as he has. Premier South, without everything they've done for me, RJ, he's a great guy. Runs a great company over there at Premier South Roofing. So if y'all need anything like that, make sure you reach out to them. They'll take care of you. Jaboom Bait Company, thank them for making all my soft plastics. Rish Tree Service out of Kenner, they're going to be one of my sponsors next year for the 22 season. They do some really good stuff out there. They had the whole contract after the hurricane to help out in Kenner, so they cleaned up the whole city real nice. I know I'm probably forgetting somebody. AHEC, that's another one of my sponsors for next year. And of course, my company. I don't know if y'all can see my shirt in my boat, LA Bass.
Okay.
So we're working on some big things with them right now. We're supposed to be releasing a website for LA Bass sometime before the end of the year. It's just been a mess this year trying to get everything squared away with all the bad weather, hurricanes, fishing on the road. But we're supposed to release the website before the end of the year for LA Bass, and then we're going to be doing a promotional calendar coming up in the future, just local fishing knowledge and showcase local anglers throughout the calendar, and you'll be able to find it at all your local sporting goods stores. Ascension Living and Outdoors.
Okay, yeah, it's in Gonzales. Yeah,
that's you can get Jaboom Bait at Ascension Living as well as My Fishing Apparel. They have a great store over there. And I think that's it.
Okay. Well, before we close, I'd like to tell everybody that the Garden State Outdoor Sports Show is going to take place January 6th through 9th of 2022 at the New Jersey Convention and Exposition Center in Edison, New Jersey. The Northern Illinois Sports and Outdoors Show is going to take place January 13th through 16th of 2022 at the Lake County Fairgrounds in Grays Lake, Illinois. Go on into the Northern Illinois Sports Show, go into the Grant Rods booth, and tell them Jay sent you. And I'd like to thank you, Jered, for coming on to my show. And I am looking forward to fishing with you in the future.
Yeah, heck yeah. I'll be back on the 24th from Nebraska, and
Okay.
just getting the boat ready for next year. The Toyota Series starts up in February, so just trying to get everything ready for February. And you let me know, and I'll take you out there, and we'll have a good time.
We sure will. And I'd like to thank everybody for listening to Let's Talk Fishing podcast. Again, my name is Jay Angel with very special guest Jered Fontenot from LA Bass.
Thank you.